Hard-won norms are eroding, and arms control is dying.
A dire warning from the United Nations about the waning influence of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. It's being reviewed in the shadow of a tense ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran. Will the agreement survive? And is it enough to prevent a nuclear disaster? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mohammed Jamjoom. The Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty is the most extensive arms control agreement in the world. It has 191 signatories and is based on a simple principle. Countries without nuclear weapons won't acquire them, and those that do will give them up. But in recent years, implementation of the treaty has flagged. Both experts and diplomats are warning the risk of a nuclear arms race has never been so high. So, could a review of the Non-Proliferation Treaty produce stricter measures to eliminate the threat? And how much of a danger does the U.S. and Israel's war with Iran pose globally? We'll raise these questions with our guests, but first, this report from Dmitry Medvedenko.
The United Nations is conducting its 5-year review of the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. The timing is crucial. It comes against the backdrop of a joint military offensive by the US and Israel against Iran to ensure, they say, it will never have a nuclear weapon. The US is a nuclear-armed state, and Israel is widely believed to have a nuclear arsenal.
The prospects of a new nuclear arms race are looming over us, the scale of which we are yet to fathom.
The original 5 nuclear powers are the United States, Russia, the UK, France, and China. They tested atomic weapons before 1967. 3 years later, the Non-Proliferation Treaty was established based on 3 principles: to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons and weapons technology, to further the goal of achieving nuclear disarmament, and to promote cooperation in the peaceful use of nuclear energy. Since then, at least 3 more countries have obtained atomic weapons. India, shortly after the treaty was enacted, and Pakistan in the 1990s. Neither has signed the treaty. North Korea signed in 1985, but withdrew in 2003. And Israel maintains a policy of nuclear ambiguity. It, too, has not signed the treaty.
Does Israel have nuclear capabilities and nuclear weapons? Yes or no?
We've always said that we won't be the first to introduce it, so we haven't introduced it.
But that's not an answer to the question. Do you have them or do you not?
Of any country. It's as good an answer as you're going to get.
Iran signed the NPT, and it's adamant it has the right to enrich uranium for peaceful purposes, something the treaty guarantees. Low-enriched uranium is used to generate energy in power plants. However, since the United States withdrew from the 2015 nuclear deal with Iran, the country has enriched uranium to 60%, far above civilian purposes but not yet weapons grade. And for President Donald Trump, that's a red line.
And we want no enrichment, but we also want the enriched uranium.
The treaty holds countries accountable through political pressure rather than binding enforcement. But the UN chief says its principles are being ignored.
Today, a state of collective amnesia has taken hold. Nuclear sabers rattle once more. Mistrust rules the day. Hard-won norms are eroding, and arms control is dying.
Many world leaders are concerned the US and Israel's war against Iran could end up being an incentive for other countries to procure nuclear weapons as a deterrent, something the Non-Proliferation Treaty was designed to prevent. Dmitry Medvedenko, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
All right, let's go ahead and bring in our guests. From Vienna, we're joined by Tariq Rauf. He's the former head of verification and security policy coordination at the International Atomic Energy Agency, the UN nuclear watchdog. Kelsey Davenport is in Bozeman, Montana. She's the director for non-proliferation policy at the U.S. Arms Control Association And in Princeton, New Jersey, is Seyed Hossein Mousavia, a former Iranian nuclear negotiator. A warm welcome to all of you, and thanks so much for joining us today on Inside Story. Tariq, Rauf, let me start with you today. In 2020, you wrote an overview of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty as it marked its 50th anniversary. You said that the chasm between the nuclear weapon states and non-nuclear weapon states had been deepening, and that if you took that together with collapsing nuclear arms control architecture, the divide has brought the NPT to an inflection point. Where, from your vantage point, do things stand now?
Well, now things are a little bit worse. The chasm between the nuclear weapon states and the non-nuclear weapon states has deepened. Now, for the first time in the history of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, there is no existing nuclear arms control or arms control agreement between Russia and the United States. The last one, New START, expired on the 5th of February. Both of these countries can put more nuclear warheads on their existing ballistic missiles and bombers without having to make new ones. Russia de-ratified the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty last year. And recently, the United States accused China of carrying out secret small-yield nuclear tests, and the U.S. threatened that it too could join Russia and China in resuming some form of nuclear testing. So the atmosphere for the review conference, which started yesterday in New York, is very charged, and already yesterday, unfortunately, the states began to fight with each other.
So, Tariq, certainly, as of now, you're not optimistic about where things stand. I want to ask you, though, looking backwards a bit, how effective has the treaty been until now? How much did the treaty help prevent the spread of nuclear weapons since its inception in 1970?
Well, the general consensus is that the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty is the cornerstone of the global regime for nuclear non-proliferation and nuclear disarmament. The spread of nuclear weapons has been contained to only 9 countries. At one time, President Kennedy was concerned that by the end of the decade of the 1960s, there could be 15 or 20 countries with nuclear weapons. The Non-Proliferation Treaty, in a sense, recognizes China, France, United Kingdom, Russia, and United States as nuclear weapon states, but it does not recognize North Korea, Israel, Pakistan, and India as nuclear weapon states. We refer to them as nuclear armed states because they're outside the global regime, much to their chagrin. These countries are constantly now criticizing the Non-Proliferation Treaty. And then the recent attacks on Iran's safeguarded nuclear facilities in June of last year by the United States, a permanent member of the Security Council, a depository of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and Israel, the only country in the Middle East with unchecked nuclear weapon program, attacking safeguarded facilities. This attack happened on the 12th of June. The IAEA last verified Natanz and Fordow on the 10th and 11th of June. So these attacks were a kick in the teeth of the International Atomic Energy Agency's verification system. And now all this talk about Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon is basically nonsense. Because the IAEA already said in its report of 31 May last year that Iran does not have a structured nuclear weapon acquisition program. So these fissures will come and be a big problem now in New York as the review conference drags on for the next 4 weeks.
Kelsey, Davenport, I want to ask you about some of the alarm that's being raised by UN officials, specifically UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. At the UN General Assembly, he addressed those who had gathered to start the review process of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. He said the cornerstone of efforts to eliminate nuclear weapons has been eroding. He said that commitments had been unfulfilled and that trust and credibility were wearing thin. We need, he said, to breathe life into the treaty once more. From your perspective, how can that be done?
Well, I think one of the defining debates about this NPT review conference is how to measure success. What does supporting the treaty and strengthening the treaty throughout the review conference actually mean? Now, there are a number of states going into this review conference that say it is critical that the states parties adopt a consensus final document that reaffirms support for the treaty, but also articulates some specific actions that advance the treaty, that advance concerns about the slowed progress on arms control, and disarmament, that strengthen nonproliferation, that make clear that states that do not have nuclear weapons can still access nuclear energy. But in today's geopolitical environment, agreement on specific actions is going to be quite challenging. So other states believe that a successful review conference is one that simply reaffirms support for the treaty, that passes a basic final document, but that's risky as well. It risks papering over some of these serious issues that can undermine overall support going forward. So I think the chair of the review conference, Ambassador Viet, has a very challenging 4 weeks ahead of him as he tries to navigate these different understandings about what a successful treaty review conference will look like, and tries to find compromise between those who are seeking specific actions to strengthen the treaty and those who worry that going down that route is only going to break consensus and lead to another treaty review conference, the third in a row, ending without the adoption of a consensus final document.
Kelsey, if I could just follow up with you on some of your thoughts. You're talking about how complicated the terrain is in order to make this a success and what you believe should comprise some of the discussion and negotiation going forward. Going into this process, what's the primary role of the review conference? Where do they see it at day one? Is it simply to look at countries as they are meeting their commitments under the NPT and figuring out a path forward? Or is that too limited a definition for what the conference is supposed to be, at least at the get-go?
I think it's too limiting to say that the primary objective should be looking at individual, state actions and the steps that need to be taken to strengthen the NPT. We also need to see the regime as a whole. As Tariq mentioned, the NPT really is the cornerstone of global non-proliferation and disarmament efforts. And if we look across the different pillars, support for disarmament, support for nonproliferation, support for access to peaceful nuclear technology, support across all three of these pillars is eroding. And I think it's also important at this NPT review conference for states to fundamentally confront what an erosion of confidence, an erosion of trust, an erosion of belief in the NPT would mean for the international system. What does the future look like if states no longer perceive the NPT as providing security benefits? What does the future look like if states that do not have nuclear weapons determine that the NPT no longer provides a path forward on disarmament, that they then perceive themselves that they need nuclear weapons in order to push back against coercion and aggression from the nuclear weapon states? So I think fundamentally looking at the big picture, questioning what a world looks like where confidence in the NPT, where implementation of the NPT continues to erode, is also a key factor for the next 4 weeks that states need to grapple with.
Seyed Hossein Mousavia, I want to ask you where you stand on things in the big picture here. Do you believe that the treaty's enforcement principles are consistent across the board? Is the credibility of the treaty on the line right now?
I really don't believe there is no realistic credibility for non-proliferation treaty. First of all, the fact is that all nuclear weapon states, member of NPT, they have been committed since the creation of NPT, they have been committed to nuclear disarmament, and they have not done it. This is a clear failure or violation. Second, you have seen that even they are modernizing and competing on modernization of the nuclear weapon system. Therefore, this is another violation of NPT. Third, you can see that they have strategic relations with those countries with nuclear weapon, not member of NPT, like Israel, like Pakistan, like India. And fourth, you can see a very clear double standard about member states to use peaceful nuclear technology, the coercion pressures on Iran, and compared to the other countries which they can peacefully enjoy the nuclear technology. And then we have a clear double standard about the rights of member states. Countries like Brazil, Argentina, Japan, Germany, Netherlands, they are all non-nuclear weapon states. They have enrichment, and the US have been insisting for zero enrichment in Iran. And then we see the US-Israeli war on Iran, on Iranian nuclear facilities, while Iran is member of NPT. Its nuclear program was and is under safeguard agreement. Nevertheless, two nuclear weapon states, they have attacked Iran illegally, a clear violation of United Nations Charter. And I think, problem is when the IAEA and United Nations Security Council, none of them condemned the US-Israeli attack on Iranian nuclear facility. It was, completely, again, another violation of IAEA rules, regulations, and United Nations rules and regulations. That's why I really don't believe anymore the NPT can have or has any more credibility as a realistic non-proliferation comprehensive agreement internationally to be implemented without any discrimination and not to be used as a political instrument to put pressures and coercions against countries like Iran.
Seyed Hossein, how much of a danger do you believe the U.S.'s war and Israel's war against Iran, how much of a threat does that pose globally right now?
See, when I'm coming to the Iranian situation, believe it or not, Iranian decision makers now, they are convinced that an NPT, being member of NPT, has become existential threat for them. Because the US-Israel attack and the pretext of the attack was nuclear facilities. Being member of NPT, and they do not have nuclear weapon. There is no doubt since 2003, every IAEA report, even up to 2026, has made it clear that there is no evidence of diversion toward weaponization in the Iranian nuclear program. Even since 2007, every US intelligence assessment, 2025, 2026, since 2007, every report you have seen, the U.S. intelligence assessment, they have been insisting continuously there is no evidence of diversion toward weaponization and Iranian decision-making to go toward weaponization. Nevertheless, the U.S. attacked, accusing Iran of making nuclear bomb in 2 weeks. Is exactly what Israelis, they have been advocating since 1990. And now Iranians, they believe the reason the US has never attacked and will not attack North Korea is because North Korea withdrew from NPT and mastered nuclear bomb. Iran, if Iran has mastered nuclear bomb, the US and Israel would never attack Iran. And the other reality is that the sanctions and pressures on Iran is more than North Korea. Iran is the most inspected country during the history of non-proliferation. 25-30% of the IAEA budget since 2003 has been invested for verification mechanism inspections in Iran. Sometimes, some years, even 40% of the IAEA has been invested for Iran. The most inspected country which accepted the nuclear deal, JCPOA, as the most comprehensive agreement during the non-proliferation history. Implemented 3-4 years with zero failure, were faced by the most comprehensive sanctions ever against any member state of NPT, and now attacked in 2025 when diplomacy was underway, when there was significant progress. Deal was within the reach. Again in 2026, Iran was attacked while diplomacy was underway and significant progress. Deal was within reach. And even in Islamabad, as Prime Minister of Pakistan said, that they were close to have a final deal, and the U.S. left the negotiation table and imposed sea blockade, which is act of war. Therefore, I really don't know then. And I would say,
Seyed Hossein, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we just need to be conscious of time because we're running out of time. I wanted to go back to Tariq, Rauf, and ask you about another aspect to all this. Israel is one of 4 UN member states that's never signed the treaty. The others are India, Pakistan, and South Sudan. Israel never signed the NPT. It maintains a policy of nuclear ambiguity. It neither denies nor confirms that it has a nuclear arsenal, even though it's widely believed that they do. How much does that complicate things?
Well, for a long time, there's been a proposal advanced originally by Iran in 1974 to establish a zone free of nuclear weapons in the region of the Middle East, and this was broadened in 1990. Under the Mubarak initiative of Egypt to make it a zone free of weapons of all mass destruction. So Israel's undeclared nuclear weapons arsenal provides a strong motivation for other countries in the region to look for their own security. And nuclear weapons could be one aspect of it. So as Hossein Mousavia was saying, Iraq didn't have nuclear weapons, it was bombed. Syria didn't have nuclear weapons, it was bombed. Libya didn't have nuclear weapons, it was bombed. Iran didn't have nuclear weapons, it was bombed, whereas North Korea is not bombed. So these current actions are now actually being a driver for proliferation rather than being a measure for non-proliferation. And nobody in the world really wants to talk about Israel's nuclear arsenal. Who helped Israel get nuclear weapons? They got highly enriched uranium, several hundred kilograms from the United States, heavy water from Norway, plutonium and reprocessing facilities, and nuclear warhead design information from France and other countries. So all of these Western countries helped Israel develop its nuclear weapons arsenal and now protect it. They protect it in the IAEA, they protect it in the NPT. In the IAEA, I was responsible for the Director General's effort to have a forum on the Middle East as a nuclear weapon-free zone, and it was consistently opposed by Israel with the support of the United States. And in the NPT review conference process in 1995, the Non-Proliferation Treaty was made of indefinite duration. We would not be sitting here today with the NPT if it was not extended indefinitely in 1995. And one key element of that bargain was a nuclear weapon-free and a WMD-free zone in the region of the Middle East. And again, the United States is the one, even under the Obama administration, stymied those efforts. So unless now we come to capturing Israel's nuclear weapons program through a diplomatic process of a nuclear weapon-free zone in the region of the Middle East, we will never get to it because there are no military threats left for Israel. It is now the unchallenged military hegemon. And therefore, at this review conference, I think there should be a redoubled effort to push for the establishment of a zone free of nuclear weapons in the region of the Middle East.
Kelsey Davenport, it looked to me like you were reacting to some of what Tariq Rauf was saying. It looked like you wanted to jump in, so please go ahead.
Well, I certainly agree with Tariq that trying to advance a nuclear weapons-free zone in the Middle East would be advantageous, that there needs to be a more proactive approach to both recognizing Israel's nuclear weapons program, but also trying to take steps to dismantle it in the long term. However, I think we have seen that the zone process as part of the NPT has caused considerable controversy, has caused the United States to object to the adoption of a consensus final document at the behest of Israel in 2015. And so I wonder if we need to get a little bit more creative when we're talking about a regional solution. I mean, one option could be to move away from the broader conception of a Middle East zone, perhaps focus more specifically on Iran and the Gulf states. states. And if you begin that process with a security dialogue that addresses some of the broader security concerns that have pushed Iran to consider nuclear weapons, to leave open the nuclear weapons option, that have pushed Saudi Arabia to threaten to develop nuclear weapons, addressing those drivers could then create the space where states feel more confident with additional transparency and nuclear limitations. So looking at the sub-region first, trying to address some of those drivers, and then moving outward might be a more advantageous way to address regional proliferation concerns in the Middle East at a time right now when I just think it is highly unlikely that Israel is going to be willing to sit down with states in the region and put meaningful steps to reduce its nuclear program on the table.
Seyed Hossein, Mousavia, and we just have a couple of minutes left. Look, we're at a moment now where military spending is hitting record highs each year. Nuclear arsenals are growing. People are concerned about a nuclear arms race looming. What, from your perspective, needs to be done? What are concrete steps that can be taken to help improve the situation going forward?
No, I agree with Kelsey. A sub-regional can be an idea. You have seen during last 15, 20 years, I have been writing in hundreds of articles in my book, in my lectures, advocating for sub-regional nuclear weapon-free zone, WMD-free zone within the Persian Gulf, in the framework of a new security cooperation structure in the Persian Gulf, which would go even beyond nuclear WMD-free zone, like maritime security, like even the current situation in Strait of Hormuz could be and can be addressed within such a framework. Nevertheless, as Tariq said, since 1970, we have UN decision, UN resolution, nuclear weapon-free zone in the Middle East. All Middle Eastern countries, they are member of NPT, and they are working, they are supporting, they are ready to go for implementation of such a resolution. There is only one obstacle, which is Israel has remained for 50 years as the only nuclear weapon state in the Middle East. And the US and the world powers, they all are supporting, because the Israeli strategy is nuclear monopoly, exclusivity of nuclear weapon in the Middle East for the broader agenda like Greater Israel. That's why, as long as we are in this status quo, and I should also mention, it is not only Iranian nuclear program which have been attacked. Iraq has been attacked. Libya, Syria, every Muslim country has tried to have enrichment or heavy water. They have been attacked by Israel or the US in order to keep the nuclear supremacy of Israel in the region. As long as this is the strategy, we are going to have nothing.
I'm sorry again to have interrupted you. We have run out of time, so we're going to have to leave the conversation there. Thanks so much to all of our guests, Tariq Rauf, Kelsey Davenport, and Seyed Hossein Mousavia. And thank you, too, for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website. That's aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on X. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. For now, that's it from me, Mohammed Jamjoom, and the whole team here. Al Jazeera's coverage continues in just a moment. Stay tuned.